Good evening and welcome to.
We try this again.
Yeah, we're going to go right from the top as if none of that happened, and then when it hits the YouTube, no one will know about this. This won't be in the
Exactly.
podcast or the YouTube. This is a live
This is
event moment only.
Twitch exclusive.
Sorry about that, everybody. Hey, I never said anything other than I was a complete idiot that didn't really understand what he's doing. But I think we're at the point where we can start, so we will. So this is going to be One World, One Blood Bowl, episode 7. Merry Christmas.
And happy holidays for those of you who are not Christian like myself.
Yeah, or Merry Winterval, Happy Hanukkah, and
Hanukkah,
all
yeah.
of those other things that happen at this time of year. Um,
Kwanzaa.
let's start there instead. It is a tough time of year. Anyone that used to listen to the Football podcast will know I've lost at least one friend this year through self-harm, and it's a time of year where I do like to, as well as spend time with my family and my friends, think about those friends of mine that are in tough positions and just make sure I've reached out and said hello. Just simply, as much as that can be just a huge, huge change for somebody. So let's all try and remember at this time of year, to try and be nice to everyone in our lives that we care about. So, One World, One Blood Bowl, episode 7. It was always going to be about equality, diversity, and inclusion at some point because I believe in that, hence the name of the show. But the show is also about poking into all corners of Blood Bowl, and that's what we were going to do tonight. First of all, when we were only going to be 2 months away from Blood Bowl 3, this was going to be a let's say goodbye to Blood Bowl 2. So I invited on various corners of Blood Bowl 2. And then when that obviously isn't going to be the case for quite some time, we think probably, we invited on some different people and we thought we'd talk about some different ways of playing Blood Bowl and things that were going off in different formats. One of those was always going to be the Cabal Vision National All Stars, I think is the name it's settled on, but it's had various names. And I'm going to talk a bit about that because I was a little bit on the inside of it. But obviously, when that was announced, anyone that's been around Blood Bowl 2, and I'm sure people on Fumble and wider would have heard about it too, will know that some issues were raised around inclusion and diversity, and that's a subject I'm very passionate about. And I thought it was the elephant in the room to not talk about it tonight. So, whilst that was never really our intention, that is something we are going to touch on at some point this evening. And then when a space came available on the panel, I invited Krista on because there's been some issues over the last couple of years on Fumble that have caught some attention too. And it's a good time just to throw that issue around a bit. But there's lots of other things going on in Blood Bowl and lots of people that we've invited on tonight. So as well as Krista, who has been on before, we have Corn Knight, who I first
Hello.
met playing tabletop up in York at the UKTC. But I think if anyone has heard of him, and I doubt you have, then probably it's from his many, many leagues that he plays on Blood Bowl 2. I think he's probably one of the most sort of knowledgeable people about the league situation over there. We've already talked to Rebel about perhaps the big league, but Corn Knight knows a lot about all sorts of them. And also, I'm pleased to welcome Neutral AI, a friend of mine from America, who's here to talk about Blood Bowl 2 and plays all sorts of bits and bobs and is also a very popular and rising streamer, I would suggest. So whilst we are going to talk about all of that stuff, let's just talk about life and Christmas. And when we tried to kick off earlier and no one could hear us, I started with Krista, and then I thought, let's not do that. He's been on before. Let's start with Corn Knight. Hello, Louis, and welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl. Tell us about you and Blood Bowl. How's your adventure in Blood Bowl started, and where is it taking you now?
All right. Well, I think like a lot of my age Blood Bowl players, I started playing I started playing the second edition with the polystyrene board about uh, 30 years ago, something like that, and you know, left it for a period of time, going to university and stuff. And then when Blood Bowl 1 came out, started playing a little bit. And then when Blood Bowl 2 came out, I played it a lot. And because of playing Blood Bowl 2, I became an admin in one league, UK BBL, and I'm also an admin in RPS, which we're going to talk about a bit at some point. I think being an admin is kind of like, I think you should kind of give back to leagues a bit in one way or another. And like some people stream, some people should, admin a bit. I guess we can't, lots of people can just play, but it's nice if we can, do something towards the community, right?
Always, but who should admin a bit?
Well, I think it's a thankless job, so you've got to be able to take Jimmy telling you you're rubbish at it at some point in your your admin career. Yeah, it's like I think everyone should try and help the leagues and things that they're taking part in, right? You can't just take all the games, right? I think streaming is a way of giving back. I think streaming is like, often advertising leagues and stuff. So we talked about TT. I was adminning for UK BBL, and UK BBL has its own TT. So every year, once or twice, they get together in a hotel in Derby, and it's a good kind of bridge for Blood Bowl 2 players who aren't used to sitting across from someone else. Usually the rules are a bit, Blood Bowl 2 friendly, because obviously most of the people there started in Blood Bowl 2 or met in Blood Bowl 2.
Right.
And it's good, it's a weekend in a hotel where you get drunk and have fun playing board games. Mostly Blood Bowl.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll circle back to that in a minute. I wonder,
Mm.
I wonder how attractive that space is. But
Mm.
I always think it's interesting. I mean, I've been to a few tournaments. I tend not to leave London if I can possibly avoid it for a tournament because, I'd quite like to come home to my family in the evening. But that whole going away is a whole different way of doing it as well. If it's a 2-day, a real event sort of thing. I mean, I do enjoy the UKTC being on a team and being, so far away. I mean, York is north of the wall.
I've literally never played in London. Well, sorry, that's not true. I've not played in London since the 90s. I've like all my tabletops have always been outside of London and have involved a trip and staying somewhere and hotels and stuff. And I kind of like that. I kind of like the weekend away from life type thing.
Now,
I think
I
that's
did want
fun.
to talk to you about Pony, which is where we sort of crossed paths for the second time.
Mm-hmm.
I was somewhat randomly saw an advert to say, do you want to come and play in Pony, which is a Blood Bowl 2 competition. I did so. That was what, 2 seasons ago. I've done the last two, haven't I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe.
Um,
Yeah, too. Yeah.
which I found really enjoyable. It was on Blood Bowl 2, I'd only ever really, hotlined the CCL and tried to sort of power records up through that. And suddenly, and some of the leagues hadn't really appealed to me because, modesty aside, if I throw myself into the Rebel Rookie League, that's going to be a thing, isn't it? It's going to,
They wouldn't let you in. They literally have rules about minimum. Like if you've played more than a certain number of games, they don't let you play in the rookie league. And like to a point where I think it's kind of not fair. There are some players who are terrible and could really do with the help of the rookie league, but they're not kind of allowed in. So RPS, which is where the Pony is. I was an admin there before I joined UK BBL,
right.
and they have the longest running stunty league. And that's kind of like I think that's a good measure of what the league is all about. The normal kind of eternal league is match days are 10 days long, so it's a bit longer than usual. People don't take it too seriously. It's a bit more fun and silly, and there's a lot more concentration on the side leagues like Stunty and Pony. And so Pony is an idea that one of the admins came up with. So before Pony, he wanted to start a league called the NBA, which was no blocks allowed. So he wanted people to join a league where no one was allowed to take block or wrestle or pro or re-rolls or some other mad things.
Right.
So he's been trying to write as many crazy rule sets for a while. And
the only ones of those I've ever really been tempted to play in, I did years ago play one that took the three big guys from Pact. And somehow we managed to get it that you could have, I think, 3 goblins as well, somehow. It may have been a very older version of Pact or something. And you had 3 big guys and 3 goblins, and that was your team. And that was quite fun. But people do always seem to try to see, well, hang on, if I took Blood Bowl and took this out of it, that would be fun. And I mean, there's a lot of that on Fumble, particularly, with things like the Secret League. They've designed their own 100 rosters. Is that something that's always appealed to you? Is just not the basic rules? Is that one of the sort of joys of League?
Yeah, I mean, personally, although I'm kind of known for playing in a lot of Eternal Leagues, I don't actually really enjoy the kind of Blood Bowl 2 Eternal League experience where you have like 2,000 to 3,000 TV chaos and Nurgle teams killing each other at the top of the league. That's not my idea of a fun time. I've got to admit, I don't really enjoy the kind of the grindiness of CCL either. So I'm always looking for interesting other things. Rebel did a side league called Imperium, which was also really interesting, where they kind of built a website where you collected cards, and so it was in the mixed team environment in Blood Bowl 2. So you had these weird, big teams of lots of different positionals, and by playing games, you gained extra players. So everyone started with like a certain number of cards, and then you built up that cards by playing by playing more games. And there were like weird special plays like waterlogged pitch where everybody lost 2 movement and that kind of
I
thing.
seem to
And
recall
it
we
was
had a war or two on Fumble, where there were actual sort of territories marked out, and you had to invade them playing games and things. And certainly we had a Borg invasion. Somebody created a way of playing a sort of Borg-like rule set for how you developed players and teams, and that was a huge meta group that was going on. But I mean, really, I have just sort of ground out records and tournament qualifications most of my time in Blood Bowl. I do play in a couple of key leagues, but perhaps not some of the wilder, crazier ones. Now, is Pony's coming back again, isn't it? Now that we know we've got
yeah. So I
plenty of
think
Blood Bowl
yeah.
2 left in us.
I mean, like we'll keep doing Pony in Blood Bowl 2. Even like RPS is going to keep carrying on past the point at which Blood Bowl 3 starts. I'm sure like a lot of the people who like RPS like it because of the strange things it does, and I don't think Blood Bowl 3 when it comes out
So
will allow
RPS is
us to
sort of
do
an
a lot of strange
umbrella
things.
under which several different things happen.
Yeah, so RPS was a UK like it's a I think it's like a tech newspaper or something
Yeah, Rock
originally.
Paper Shotgun is where that
Yeah,
comes from, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, they had a forum, and the forum had its own Blood Bowl league, and in Blood Bowl 1 from pretty much the beginning. But although it was a standard eternal kind of Blood Bowl 1 league at the beginning, and it's kind of morphed a bit over time. And there was a period when I joined where it was all organised on Steam because the forum died, and now it's all on Discord. And like I've got to admit, I'm a serial Discord and Twitch watcher. So I pretty much sit by a computer almost all day, every day.
Well,
I have Discord open all the time, and I
who
usually
doesn't?
have Twitch somewhere as well.
You're saying that like there's some other method of living your life.
I mean, I was like that before COVID as well.
Um, now, as I said, I've done a couple of ponies, and then last season I did something which I hope was a good thing. But I mean, perhaps as someone on the admin side, I mean, what do you think about it? So in the first pony I was in, I was quite when I arrived, it was very flattering. Sort of a few people had heard of who I was and said, "Oh, this is nice," and I streamed a few of the games. And then I sort of invited a few people in. I mean, I invited Dimmy G, which apologies there, but he then invited his mate Eliod, who's a much bigger name than me in the sort of Twitch community. And suddenly we had a few sort of really big names. I mean, K Foged, some of his last Blood Bowl 2 was played in the Pony system. Is that a good thing to bring sort of these big names to it, or did it change it from a sort of a nice little fun thing with some mates to suddenly, oh blimey, here's some
I
high
mean, sorry. I
profile
guess
names coming in?
we should actually explain what Pony is. So Pony is a league where everyone gets given a star player at random, and they have to build their team in a res format around that star player. So it's the kind of reverse of quite a lot of people play res where they pick a star player, but
Yeah.
rarely do you have to build. So you end up with a lot of weird, like no one's ever played with this star player. Why would you play with this person? He's terrible. And trying to build around them is kind of the fun bit. I think. Well, basically, when there were loads of good coaches, also was the year when was the season when we had all 56, 52 star players taken, and I think that was really good because
Yeah.
you knew that. So there's a rule that you're allowed to return a star player if you don't like it, and everyone who returned a star player knew that they were going to be getting a really shit one back because it was
Because
only the
it was
ones
only
who were
the
being
duff
returned.
ones that were getting turned in.
Yeah.
Yes, except Eliod, who turned in a terrible one, who I then got, and got Zara in return.
Well,
But hey,
there's no accounting for taste.
it was apparently fair.
Mhm.
So look, Pony's going to kick off again soon, isn't it? In the RPS Discord, they tend to recruit, but presumably adverts will be dropped all around if people want them. And we
Yeah.
will put some links in the description of this, both on the YouTube and on the on Spotify or Anchor, where this gets uploaded to. If it gets scraped off onto other sites, those links may not be there, but I will try and put them in the description. I had a really good time doing it. The first time I had Ice Pelt Hammer Blow, which meant I had to pick Norse. Obviously, I didn't have another option, and it brought me back to Norse after maybe a year of not having coached them. And it's really nice sometimes to touch in on a race that you perhaps wouldn't have thought of when you are entering a tournament like that. And then the next year, I had to try and make something out of
Hawk on Heart
Hawk on
Ripper.
Heart Ripper. And that was again challenging, just because he's so incredibly terrible. So to try and
I
build
mean,
a team that,
there
that
is
would
a
use
bit of a
him but not
meta.
rely on him, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a meta where there's quite a lot of just taking the star and ignoring him and trying to build the best rest of the team, whatever he
But I mean, you're also there. I mean, not every
that
Blood Bowl
star
game
is.
should be just about rinsing it for the min-max pleasure, should it? Sometimes there should be some role playing, some what am I doing here? And you had to try and put it into the team somewhere, didn't you? That's 250k's
It
worth of value you need to try and get out of it somewhere.
like the hardest thing is when you get one of the really expensive ones, like people who play Morg or Ramtut. I had Ramtut one year, and I like a movement 4 mummy is not my wheelhouse. It's pretty much the opposite of what I would naturally choose to play. And I was terrible, but it was a different kind of terrible than usual.
Now, talking of different formats and things, I want to introduce Neutral. Say hello, hello, Neutral. Keeping
Hello,
you
Neutral.
you sat there in silence. I came across you as a Blood Bowl 2 Twitch streamer, I suppose. That's
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
it's okay, but it's nice that you do open with the apology. I felt that was due. And I love your energy, I love your sarcasm, and I like your Blood Bowl. But I guess when I come to describe people for the adverts and things, that was pretty much where I ended. What quest are you on within Blood Bowl? What are you trying to do? And how's your Blood Bowl adventure been? Where did you come from in
Well,
Blood Bowl? Why are you here? And where are you going? Easy
so
question.
like when I first started, I played a lot of Paradox Interactive games, and I think if someone knows Knorr, he works for Paradox Interactive, so he was the stream guy. I ended up watching his Twitch, and I was like, oh, he uploads to YouTube. I learned to play from there. So sorry, Knorr haters. I'm decent. He's pretty decent, I think. He's awesome. I love him a lot
Yeah, I mean,
as a streamer.
I'm hoping to get him on One World, One Blood Bowl, and it's one of the things I was going to talk about is does he feel he is a gateway drug into Blood Bowl? And
I was going to say, sorry, I forgot to mention that the Knorr and the Krendor League was the reason I got back into Blood Bowl 2 as well. Was watching them. I was kind of watching YouTubers shortly after my son was born. Late nights. So oh look, it's Blood Bowl. And that's kind of what got me back as well. Sorry.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's I started playing in 2019. It's actually funny that the day, I think the week I started playing was the week I started transitioning. So it's pretty much been a thing that's constant since 2019 for me, August of that year. And I first started playing, I played a bit of casual. I ran into the admin of the guy who runs TRBBL, Totally Relaxed Blood Bowl League. That's the Ninja Bread man who had to step down recently due to personal reasons, and I wish him the best. Um, and I ended up getting involved in that, and that became my only way to play Blood Bowl for about a year and a half. I was just doing a TRBBL game every 2 weeks. And then I decided to stream, I think, about a year ago. And then I figured one day, you know what, I'm decent at Blood Bowl. Let's give it a shot. And what I'm trying to do with it is, I don't know. Honestly, I think I'm more focused on my commentary than anything else now. I don't really care if I make Chalice. I just don't see a point in it because it's not a way I like to play Blood Bowl, which is high TV. Everything's mega big, which is why I was so excited for redraft in Blood Bowl 3, is it allowed a lot more management in teams. It definitely seemed like team building was more fun. But alas, when we get Blood Bowl 3 in 2025, I'm going to have to wait for that.
yes,
But
hopefully it will be not long of a wait. I think enough of us have said loud enough that really, if you want an online presence for this, a two-person presence, we're going to expect redrafting. That's
yeah,
inherent to the new rules.
yeah, and I think, I'm always like, I think I got kind of known for aggressive elf play for a while. I was a little aggressive at one point. I think you watched a game of mine against Elliot, and you had some choice words to say during the.
Well, hence the question. I know it was very unfair, but exactly that. There was a time I thought, right, you've come out of league and you're looking to hone those grinding a run skills, and then you decided that you were getting known perhaps for elf play, and you wanted to show you could do all sorts of things, so you started doing all sorts of things.
Yeah, I'll beat you with any team. That's what I say to people. Except stunties. I'll play stunties in anything but CCL. because I don't want to play a team that's designed to lose games. That's not fun for me. And if I'm not having fun, I'm not going to play at my best. And I want to make sure you're getting me at my best, not,
So I say a
I'll
lot.
play.
You don't have to play to grind a run or for a win rate. You can
No.
just play for fun. Is that what you think you're up to at the moment?
Mostly, yeah. I do like winning, so I tend to play teams that I think I can win with. Right now it's Orcs. I've played about 20 games of Orcs overall in my entire time before I picked this team up this season. It's done okay. I mean, 9-2-1's a decent starting record. It's not my best starting record, but it's all right. If it qualifies, it qualifies. If it doesn't, who cares? I'm not basing my entire world if I get invited to a not invited if I get a ticket to Chalice. I almost made it with Lizards a few seasons ago, but anyone who's
Would that be? Would you consider that, a box ticked, something you wanted to get done, or just, oh, that's happened, let's see what goes next?
a lot more of that second one. I don't think making Chalice validates how good you are of a player. Personally, I think Knorr's a great player and he's never made Chalice. And I think a lot of what Chalice does is it does come down to how much time you have plus how good you are. Definitely adds to the two.
Do you think that
Knorr's
bleeds
not
into
got
some
a
of
lot of
your?
time.
Does that bleed into some of your commentary about Chalice? Do you think?
Yes. We've seen some coaches who are not the best make Chalice. There have been some games where I've questioned existence. I have questioned the how many divines there can be at a single time. It has made me ask a lot of questions about the worlds, but it is what it is in Chalice. If you think it's weaker right now, it's weaker. If you think it's stronger, it's stronger. I think it's fine personally, and I've definitely seen a lot of enjoyable games. If I had to, let me pick one. Okay, so I did the commentary for Ogre's Halflings, and that was damn treat. How often do you get to do the commentary for Ogre's Halflings? I don't know. And I think it was really fun commentating Ogre's Halflings live, and that's the third ever time Ogres have won in Chalice. That was a blast because I felt like I was being a part of something, and that was really, really cool. And it was so nice to see my friend Necrodome get that win too. And I think that one meant a whole lot more to me because I got to commentate my friend's channel, them winning with a team that only 2 people have done before. And I think it's Moomin Slayer, and I forget who else did it the first time.
Was it Crystal?
No, it was not.
No, I don't think it was. I think it was another one of the. There are some sort of ogre specialists, aren't there, that get them in a lot. But they're terrible at winning sort of knockout tournaments if they're not getting.
Yeah, they're.
Key
I mean,
packages.
ogres are literally the worst team, right?
Yes.
But it is. They're talking about some terrible coaches in Chalice. It's a very luck-based game. You can you can luck your way into a good Chalice run.
Well, I mean,
a couple of good level ups.
About the standard. I mean, they doubled the number of people getting in, but also that meant that more places for each race were suddenly available. It meant that some of the scores in order to get in terms of the Doge score that they use in the CCL, have definitely got lower because back when I first had a couple of runs, it was only 32 getting in, and I think 80 was more or less what you targeted if you thought you were going to have a decent chance of one of the competitive races, and now 75 will see you in with most of them. But does that mean it's less competitive? I mean, to get up to that level of score, no matter how good you are at Blood Bowl, this has to have been a decent element of luck, right?
Well, I want people to name me a lot of games where the top players only win 70% of their matches. That's just an absurdly low rate for top players. I mean, we have players. I mean, like Mike the Machine is amazing, and he only had 80, and he's like elite level player. And Shawnee is insanely talented, and again, only 80. If you look at more competitive games, more skill-based games, people will win. The top players will win. Honestly, they can go undefeated in a whole year. 100%.
Yes.
Is reachable at the absolute peak of a lot of games. In this game, it's impossible.
Yes, if someone is 10% better than you at chess and you sit down with them, you are losing that game. Not just most of the time, you are losing. You will lose every single time that you play that person at chess. I mean, it's one of the things that attracts me to Blood Bowl, but it does generate a lot of, I think, a lot of the tilt that we see is that people feeling entitled to those wins and then not getting them. Krista, do you agree? Let's bring you in. Krista Grand Poobah of Fumble. I'm thrilled to have you back on the show. Welcome, my friend. You know things that we've just talked about. Is it true? Were Ogres the worst race back in the dim, dark days of the 2016 rule set?
No, I don't think so. They were certainly not top tier, but I mean worst teams. Depends on your criteria, honestly, in my opinion. I think it's win rates is one thing, but worst teams is the teams that don't get played, or teams that people don't like playing. Some people will say that dwarves are the worst because they hate playing against them, for example. So I mean, for me, I'm always trying to look at things from different perspectives. That's kind of what I've been doing for 18 years now.
Yeah, I mean, ogres aren't a team that appeal to me, though. I absolutely plan to do a one world, one Blood Bowl where I want to get Strider, my friend on from Switzerland, who is fantastic with ogres, and
And I mean,
always.
another thing with worst teams, if you look at, for example, stats from the NAF for vampire teams, they're doing relatively well in resurrection formats. When they have skills, you get pro on all the vampires. It's not really that difficult to play them. If you look at fumble statistics, where people actually have to skill them up, they are really, really bad. There's a big difference in terms of just context. It's the same team, but contexts are different.
That's
Now, I
kind of
know this
why I
is something
said.
we can bring Jolene in on. So, in what context do we see the new corn being any good?
Oh god, that is.
You've programmed them in, so I had a good look at them
I'll,
earlier today and the differences between old corn and new corn, and I still don't see anything there that makes me want to coach that team.
I'll say this in the nicest way possible. They're fuck bad. Um, there is nothing redeemable about that team outside of you get frenzy on everything, and frenzy's a good skill. I mean, I think shadowing's great. So to tell you that, if I could invalidate my opinion any faster, outside of saying pass block's a good skill, I've just done it. But it's just such a. I think you have overpriced linemen, you have an overpriced chaos warrior, you have the blood beast actually isn't that bad. And the corn gores are solid. I think they're very nice and flavorful, and they're a piece that I looked at and I went, "Oh, this wants frenzy." So why does everything else already have it? Because now we have too much frenzy.
That's the whole point. They're supposed to be the too much frenzy team.
But we
As,
did this when
you start
we
off by saying, oh, except for the frenzy, that their entire reason for existence is frenzy, right?
didn't
You
we do this
know,
when we play tested Savage Orcs back when we
Yeah,
had noble humans, the better Imperial nobility, the one that made people sad because they realized that maybe giving a team guard to start was dumb.
yeah, they were awful. But those were
And
released through the app, weren't they? They were never official, but it was obvious
they're never official,
they were
yeah.
throw them up the flagpole and see what everyone says, and everyone said, "Well, those are terrible. Don't do that."
Well, they're terrible for different reasons.
Yeah,
Like you have different spectrums of why these are bad. It's like, well, I can say, well, dwarves are a bad team and ogres are a bad team. Well, dwarves can win game, ogres can't. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But yeah, I think Corn are they're a flavorful team. The design's fantastic. I love the way the minis look, but I think sadly they're not competitive, and I think we're kind of in this stage where it looks like, and I don't want to assume this is, where Games Workshop may be a little afraid to make a good team. Just make a good team. I don't know. Make Cathay. Say they're busted, and who cares? Like, I know everyone's gonna call you a Chinese shill anyways if you make Cathay, so might as
but
well just make them good.
but no
Just
one's
piss
going to
people
mind if
off.
they keep churning out these tier two teams that people want to paint. I mean,
I
my friend
mind.
Doubtfort is in the chat. He's pointed out Corn will be the best at selling figures. I mean,
Well, it would be.
everyone that paints is going to want to paint up a Corn team, aren't they?
I don't know why, because he's the lamest Chaos God. Him and Nurgle, the first two, the lamest two, got the first two teams. You have
I
Zinch.
feel personally attacked. I'm just saying.
I wonder why. You have Zinch, who is number one top outside of, of course, Nuffle. Respects. And then you have Slanesh, and these are two phenomenal Chaos Gods that are actually fun,
Yeah,
interesting, and look really cool in Total War Warhammer 3,
they
might
do.
I
Yeah,
say.
no, I have to say I was watching those trailers this afternoon, and the minute you said that, all of that started flicking before my eyes, and I had to agree that I think those could be such flavorful Blood Bowl teams as well.
Exactly. It's just, and I love it, and it feels weird because Zinch could be a claw gimmick team. They have that very avian aesthetic. The Zongors can be a very interesting designs mini with perhaps some very interesting skills. Maybe they could be like no hands, claw, prehensile tail as a Zinch core. Like that would be very interesting and very different. What other player has that skill set?
Hmm.
And I wouldn't argue it's good. I'd argue it's different, and maybe it could be made good with more guard and stand firm built on Zinch warriors and
you,
stuff
you,
like
But isn't
that.
you
that
might as
fine
well
if
ask.
they?
You might as well ask why do Games Workshop spend so much time with Ultramarines? It's just their they like Corn, they like and a lot of a lot of 14-year-old boys do, and that's kind of
Yeah,
Krista,
like they're
you've been following the winds of Grandma Wendy for many, many years. Grandma Wendy for Blood Bowl 2, I should explain, is often how we refer to that particular enterprise on Fumble, as we do not use the words workshop and games in that order very often.
Is that in case of litigation?
We just prefer not to name them. We don't want to give them any excuse to look at us ever. We don't exist. Don't look at us. We're in the dark. Leave us alone. You hence can predict trends. Games Workshop, am I right? Are they just going to keep throwing out tier 2 teams because it won't annoy us? But the painters will buy them, so they'll shift paint and plastic, and the game will just exist, and we'll fit them in somewhere. I mean, no one is saying, "Oh no, Imperial Nobility, Black Orcs, and Snotlings, goodness me, are ruining the game, are they?" Everyone's quite happy to have them. And I'd have thought Corn the same. Well, okay, neutral you are, and it's lovely to hear a different voice. So that's fabulous. Aren't you just going to enjoy not taking them and beating up on them in Blood Bowl 3, though? No.
I just want some good teams. I don't have fun beating ogres. I don't have fun beating halflings. I don't have fun beating goblins. I just don't have fun. It feels like a chore.
So
I get genuinely
is that what
insulted.
confuses me when I come on your channel? Is you genuinely want good games, not good wins?
I know it's crazy. I know. I actually want to, and I'm playing Blood Bowl, which is absolutely ironic that I want good games and I play Blood Bowl as my.
You might need to explain a bit closer for the dwarf player as well.
Well, see, so perhaps that's the three of us, and this is who Krista, of course, is trying to cater for. I'm more the long-term meta, building something through a grind for a tournament player. Corn Knight wants a good league experience with his online Blood Bowl.
I want just different things. I want everything that I do to be as different as possible. I don't want.
Yeah, you're in Baskin Robbins trying every flavour, aren't you?
Yeah. I want.
And neutral, you want each individual unique experience to be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I want. Okay, so there's this thing you can do on elves. So you know how you can 2+ block people? Now imagine if you can 2+ dodge people. Now this might be oppressive to some people.
That does
specifically
sound fun.
teams. I mean, it's pretty fun. Listen, the reactions you get when you 5+ cage dive a ball carrier. Boy, it's funny. I do miss it. Maybe one day again.
I did say there were going to be some announcements. I want to talk a little bit about CNA in a minute. We've talked a little bit about Pony, the new season of which is upcoming. I do heartily recommend it. A different, fun way of building a roster, of having a game. It's done in a nice way. I think they put all the entrants into big leagues of about 12 people, and then it's done Swiss style within those for 4 or 5 rounds, I forget. And the top 4 qualify. So even really late into a Swiss system, there's a decent chance of getting one good result, pushing yourself up into those top 4 places. So there's very few dead games within it. I've never played a game there where anyone was trying anything except being really nice and really, really chatty. It's a very friendly environment, which is what really appealed to me about it. But Neutral, I think you've got something on the bubble, haven't you?
Yeah. Real quick, I don't think we gave Krista enough time personally.
No, we're coming back to him in a sec. Don't worry.
Okay, we're coming back to him in a second. All right, so this is I'm allowed to do my thing.
He's
now?
been on the show before, so hence he gets a lot less.
Don't worry about me. I'm good.
I just want to make sure everyone gets as much time as I'm not more important than anyone else here. So so we've got this has been in the work for about 4 or 5 months now. So I got together with the TRBBL coaches back then. Unfortunately, we had to put it to the wayside because I caught COVID in August, and since I was going to be one of the primary commentators, and I had the it's pretty nice to have me announce it because again I'm trans. It's for a trans charity, so that's why we're doing it. It's for the UK-based charity Mermaids. So hopefully we're going to get a large community-driven event. Maybe it's a 1-2 day, possibly if we get enough people, fingers crossed, 3-day event where we just play a lot of Blood Bowl. We're just trying to have fun. We're gonna have like prizes for people who do well. My dream is we get Cyanide involved, and maybe they can give some Blood Bowl 3 keys. So in 2028, you can finally play the game. And this is the working name at the moment is going to be the Rain Bowl. That's the working name at the moment. I've got a few people invited, so the people who probably are here and to know who you are, you can now talk about it. Thank you so much for being quiet about it. There have been people who have been involved for 3 months now, and they've done a great job at not spoiling anything. And I just want to do it. I think we need a community building event, and I think when I was approached to do a tournament to kind of send off Blood Bowl, we imagined we'd get it. this was the perfect time to do it because, well, February's around the corner, but now it feels like if we don't do it, Blood Bowl, I feels maybe we can invigorate some life back into this community, get everyone back in. It's not an invite-only tournament. Just say you want to be involved in it. Just say you want to play. We're thinking a resurrection format similar to the one that's done in a tiered system like Blitz Pit. I was a huge fan. We're not going to do 1-minute turn timers. Trust me. So if those turn you off, don't sweat it. And I want to make sure it's on a day where we can get as many people as possible. I know some people can't do weekends. I know some people can't do weekdays. So some people are unfortunately going to be left out for that. It's unfortunate. But it's a lot up in the air. If I can right now, we've got Rick Reckless has agreed to be a part of it, Dizzy Bass, Necronome. I know I talked to PC about it before doing this. So, I mean, if you want to throw your hat into that lot, you're more than welcome to. It's I'm hoping it's a proper way we can send the game off, and I want the community to have a great event I want to leave this game on a high note. And I'm hoping we'll get Blood Bowl 3 soon. I've been trying to remain optimistic about it, even since the beta. And in full disclosure, I got a key. They asked me personally. They went out of their way to give me a key, and I've always been honest about that. But I genuinely want this game to do well because I know that brings more people into a hobby.
Yeah.
It means the game's going to get bigger, and if it means we get more attention in this community, more work on it, maybe we don't have to wait 6 years for a new game or many years for a new rule set. We've already seen new inclusions to maybe price adjust a few of the less balanced star players at the moment. But I just want, and then this is kind of the idea, is let's do a damn charity event.
I mean, at the moment we are in a world of ongoing Blood Bowl development. I mean, I think everyone would agree that the best thing about the new rule set is that we got a new rule set. That someone is looking at Blood Bowl, taking care of Blood Bowl, trying to make a future for Blood Bowl. Whether they've done that well or not, we could then endlessly debate. But the fact that someone is trying to do that is great. I think everyone thinks so. And I mean, I'm absolutely with you. I think most people know that. I've long been in favour of saying that what's good for Blood Bowl is good for everything in Blood Bowl. So if the painters are having a good time, that's good for the people that play. If the players are having a good time, that's good for the painters. If Blood Bowl 2 is doing well, that's actually pretty good for Fumble. It drives more people to want to play Blood Bowl and play better types of Blood Bowl and different varieties of Blood Bowl. And I'm a huge fan of all of it. So of course I would try and be involved. But some of your messaging there was quite interesting to me because one of the things you talked about was both a send-off to Blood Bowl 2 and a celebration and inclusion. And you haven't set any benchmarks in terms of if you're a 60% coach, we want you.
I want everyone. I don't care if you're 20% or 80%. I want you. So I want you to have fun.
I think that's that's great. And how do people get involved in this at this stage? How do they express?
Right now, we don't have any pages up at the moment. I just wanted to announce it today because we had to delay the work because I again came down with COVID and it was a 3-month recovery for me because I had a lot of lung scarring. So thankfully, I can stream again.
Great.
And I'm alive. That was the biggest bonus.
That's goal A with COVID. I think is get through it and then see. Yeah. Any of the symptoms of long COVID?
Yeah, I can't. I can only do about 15 to 10 hours of physical labor a week now. So streaming is my only source of income at the moment.
So there will, again, on the YouTube description and on the Spotify description, there will be links to Neutral's Twitch to go and give her a follow. And there's some good, fun Blood Bowl, often related content going on there.
Yeah, occasionally it does happen. It does happen from time to time. Sometimes you will see good Blood Bowl. I can't promise all the time, though. And I want to put Wargaming's money where its mouth is, and Warhammer is for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. To me, there's no reason why it shouldn't be. I think everyone should be able to enjoy the hobby and the sort of things that we enjoy doing, which is why we're here tonight. But there is another side to that, and when it comes to talking about that, which I want to do in a little bit, but I do want to say a tiny bit more of a hello to Krista, and then we'll segue into all of that. There is another side, and those people, I'm not sure, are represented in the four of us here this evening. And we do perhaps need to hear a little bit of that voice. So I did have a chat with somebody who I know is very against diversity and inclusion within the space of Blood Bowl, but I sort of felt that was something I should do. And I am going to put a couple of their points forward. I'll try and do so respectfully. It won't be in my voice because it's not necessarily something I agree with, but I do want to hear from another side if we're going to have that conversation and discussion. But Krista, that's why one of the reasons I've brought you on tonight. So welcome to what will be perhaps a tricky subject. You are responsible for setting those sorts of policies ultimately for how an enormous number of people access Blood Bowl electronically.
Yes.
That must be great. That must be fun.
No, not at all. It's really, really difficult, honestly, coming up with rules. I mean, ideally, I would have wanted a rule that says be nice, and that's it. But unfortunately, that's not possible on the internet. So I have over the years we've had to add more new rules for how we expect people to conduct themselves. I've had a lot of arguments with people about censorship versus being being just restricting what people are allowed to say and what we accept on the site. It's a really, really difficult subject because there is a fine line between censoring, which is one example from way back, where we were pretty aggressive about our language policy. We don't want people to swear unnecessarily and be overly aggressive in the chat. And I've had really, really long and difficult dialogues with people about language, for one thing. And it's all of the rules that are on site are consequences of long dialogues, both with people who have different views and with the staff team, and trying to figure out, okay, how do you word this so that it actually makes sense and that it can be policed, and so that we can actually work within that frame of that rule frame in that sense.
Is it inevitable that no matter how free you try and make anything, the sort of the larger it gets, the more you're going to be forced into a more totalitarian way of doing business? Do you think that's an
I think
irresistible
so.
slide?
I think so. I mean, a lot of big companies, they can't really put the amount of effort that a Fumble puts into just policing things, moderating people, being active on the forums, being active in the chats. So large companies tend to be a bit more open. They don't act very swiftly. We've been fairly aggressive on keeping people in line and saying, okay, this is supposed to be fun for everyone. We don't want unnecessary arguments. And it's something that we can do. I'm happy that we can, but it's tough sometimes because you're putting yourself out there and just creating arguments with people and saying, well, when we say that you can't say that, some people take that badly, and then I end up having.
I've defended and hope I will to my dying day. I'm one of those old school liberals that even if I don't agree with you, I will defend until death your right to be wrong, your right to voice your opinion.
Yeah.
I found myself as an admin moderating and changing the name of someone who had named a lizard man George Soros, and it was a version of George Soros, which currently contravenes our naming rules. But it made me chuckle as I changed his name.
Yeah.
Am I in the wrong here? Am I on the wrong side of this fight?
I don't know. I mean, that came from a fairly recent thing where there was one team that had a Nazi theme.
Yeah.
So famous Nazis, not glorifying, just having a picture of Hitler basically on one of the teams. And that became a problem with certain people. And it took a week or two or something within the admin team to discuss this. I mean, the policy before that was that it's fine. It's not glorifying anything. It's sort of set up in a historic sense that, okay, we accept it. You're not glorifying the Nazi movement, and that's fine. But after that discussion, over that week or two that we talked through it, I came to the conclusion that I don't want to defend people doing this. I don't want to put a line where I need to decide, should this be allowed or not. I mean, after all, this is a fantasy game. It's not supposed to be an education. It's not supposed to be a platform for your political beliefs or educating people about history. So I just decided I don't want to take that fight. I don't want to defend that line. So we said, okay, we took a couple of days. I came up with a wording that basically excludes political figures from the last 100 years or so. We extended it to 1900 to cover the First World War as well. But essentially, that policy change came from as a consequence of Nazi references on the site.
Yes, I mean, as Mystic Pangolin has just said, you can put up a team where all of them are Politburo members from the Stalin era and nobody bats an eyelid. That's
Yeah,
specifically what we were trying to write a policy that did cope
yeah.
with, aren't we?
Because I don't want to. I don't want to make a political statement. I don't want to say that okay, Nazis are outside of the rules, but talking about, I don't know, Trump, which is a very inflamed topic at the moment. I don't want to make that decision. I don't I don't I don't need to have Fumble to be some sort of political statement. It's supposed to be a fun game, a place for people to get away from all that kind of stuff and just have fun for a while. Because that's a big part of our community. A lot of people are there to hide from real life responsibilities or problems or whatever it may be.
So do you feel the accusation that this is woke leftist nonsense, alienating people of old school values? Do you feel you're sort of immune to that?
No, but I mean, in a sense, I feel that it's not completely black or white, right? That there's a big spectrum, but again, I need to be able to write something that can be followed, so that there is a guide. So it's not like, okay, you can talk to one staff and they say one thing and another staff member says another, because they have slightly different values.
Hmm.
So it needs to be a very clear rule. That's why we had to err on the harder side and restrict politic figures entirely.
Now, I was fully behind the change, but another change that Fumble made recently was when you name one of your pieces, and you have a full choice of how you name your pieces, but there is also name generators for lots of the races. You can now, there's a drop down, and you can select that your piece is designated male or female, or non-binary or neutral.
Yep.
I can become a player on your team. I can become all
You can have
11.
a team of entirely non-binary or a team of
Yeah.
entirely neutral players. That's
To
I see as a
clarify.
positive change, but some people have objected about that as well, haven't they?
A quick clarification: the difference with as of BB20 is that non-binary is an option. That's the entire difference. We were working on the BB20 rule sets that took 10 months or so, and I was going through code, and I was like, I found this place where this is managed in the client itself, and I figured one option is missing, and I added it. I didn't think too much of it. It was in there for a while, and then we moved over to the new client on the site, and I added it to the site as well because it needed support in the client itself, so that it can say there and they instead of he and she and whatever, or it for neutrals. And then all of a sudden, I got a big message from a person, I'm not going to name names, claiming that that was problem, and I simply do not understand. It's so beyond my beliefs and my values that I
To
don't know
be
how to
clear,
respond.
I can still have all of my dwarves as males, can't I, if I choose to? That is still
Absolutely,
available to me. So
absolutely.
nothing's been taken away. Just an option has been added.
Yes, I mean the only difference is that sometimes by default, when you buy a player, it can default to non-binary, because I didn't want to set a specific default, so it just randomizes. So you might have to change a dropdown at some point, and you can always go back and change this without admin intervention if you want to, if you make a mistake. So it's I just don't know how to respond to criticism like that, because it's just so ridiculous, in my opinion.
Was it a decision deliberately taken at making Fumble a more inclusive space? Is that behind the
Uh,
decision? Or?
sure, I mean it's inclusion, right? Some people the whole point of having bias, the whole point of selecting a gender for your players is for RP reasons. You want to build a story for your players. It's not very strange to have non-binary people in stories, and yeah, and it was just a missing option that hasn't been addressed. So I chose to add it,
Why can't
and
I have
it's
fun by mocking Donald Trump? Or, I mean, as we've just had Shawnee admit, all of his players are named after Conservative MPs. I'm sure because of his deep love of the Conservative Party and their policies. Why isn't that the same freedom? The freedom to ridicule something like that? Isn't that part of freedom and inclusivity?
No, it creates arguments. Politics, religion, all that stuff creates a lot of arguments online, unfortunately, because people are very passionate about it, and it creates arguments. That I don't want that stuff in essentially my community. I don't want to be the head of a community where people are arguing about politics, or arguing about race, or arguing about gender, all these things, right? So I've chosen to restrict some of it and build for inclusion. I don't actively I don't actively seek to be diverse, because I'm more likely to actively not ask for these things. Let people do what they want. Let people be who they want to be on the community. If they want to say who they are, or if they want to project some sort of image, so be it. If they want to say that they're a dog, that's fine. Because it shouldn't matter. It really doesn't.
Finally,
Neutral.
I would say we finally have that furry inclusivity we've always been looking for in Blood Bowl. It took a long time, but thank you.
Anyone that's seen Jimmy Fantastic Wrestling will know we do have at least one furry in Blood Bowl. Jimmy has to have a thing there, or else they wouldn't be that. Okay, 2. Thanks for outing yourself there, Neutral. I wasn't going to push back.
No, I know someone else.
Okay.
You. God. I'm just kidding. Look at my emotes.
Corn Knight, let me come to you on this. Doing this. Let's bring you back in for adminning of leagues. How do you deal with inclusion and people that are driving others away, or behaviour that's sort of toxic, or how do you draw those lines? Or do you have to?
Yeah, you do have to. You always get kind of people who are trying to push boundaries. That's like in real life, or or on the internet. It's always the same. There's always someone who's trying to push. Usually, it's me. So I'm one of those people who has a cripple cup team that's named after warmongers, let's say. But I don't think it's a. I think it's a complicated issue, and you need to tackle it quickly. So if someone's offending other people, then you need to have a word with them. But I admin in smaller leagues, or have higher up admins than me who get to make the hard decisions, like Chris was talking about.
We've come here a little earlier than I wanted to, because I wanted to circle back around to this after we talk a bit more openly about the CNA and my involvement there, because I can't pretend that's not been a thing. So, but one of the issues that was raised in passing there is very relevant to what you just said. One of the concerns raised by one of the female coaches talking about not necessarily being enfranchised by that CNA process was that in the leagues, if you do complain, if someone is behaving toxically, the person you're complaining to has probably known the person you're complaining about for the last 7 seasons. They might be mates. How can I trust that process?
I mean, that is one of the things in the UK BBL, because of having a tabletop league where everyone meets up. There's been complaints fairly regularly about what's the word, cronyism, let's say,
cliquishness, yes, the old boys network.
Cliquiness. That's actually the phrase I was looking for. Yeah, and like some of it, like when you know what's going on in people's lives a bit more than you normally do when you're playing a computer game with someone, you do treat them differently. As an admin, you have to be wary of that and try and be fair about that. And I know that I know that it's been a complaint for. I've heard Jimmy voice his complaints about UK BBL being a lot like that. Personally, I've his main complaints about the admins there have been about one admin who's terrible. And what happens is you end up having a kind of a blame thing where people are blaming cronyism or whatever as the reason why they're not getting favourable. Where there might be another reason in the background they don't know about, that kind of that can't be passed on. That the admins might know more about someone's life and be giving them a bit more leeway, for example. And that can be complicated and a difficult balancing act.
Yeah, I remember, it's a slight aside, but I feel it's relevant. The last time I took my son to the A&E, it was an awful situation where someone who clearly had learning disabilities was being incredibly racist in order to get attention. And your liberal heart is trying to be on both sides of that at the same time. Just because someone's having their own issues, though, it doesn't make it okay to sort of crap down on other people's lives, does it, or to impact?
Oh yeah, sorry. No, so yeah. So I wasn't trying to excuse, being offensive with that. I was trying to. It's more of a like, as an admin, you do find out more. You have to make decisions, and you have to talk to all the parties involved and make the correct choice. And you might not be able to inform someone who's unhappy about what has been done, or in what way something is being handled. It can be complicated, is what I was trying to
Okay, so
get at.
yeah.
But generally,
Yeah.
if someone's being offensive, you tell them stop doing that, or we're going to chuck you out, and that's the kind of the short of it, right? But generally, as an admin, there's often more going on.
Jolene, let's get you on this before we talk the specifics of the CNA. Let's get some opening.
In what regard? What do you want to know?
How do you feel about the spaces being created in Blood Bowl right now in terms of diversity, and how do we do that better?
I mean, I like what Fumble's doing personally. I mean, I think adding those options are there because whether people like it or not, people are non-binary. Like you just have to include that. That's just how people are. It's not what it is. And I was thinking about you mentioned the team named after Nazis. I had a team in Blood Bowl 2 that was named after. It was called the Union of Blood Bowl Rejects, and it was Blood Bowl terms mixed in with Soviet figures' names. Now, if that team got removed, I would understand. But I had players called like Mikhail Touchdownsky instead of Tuchevsky, and Nikolai Block-Karain instead of Nikolai Bukharin. But I specifically went out of my way to choose figures who were lesser known, because I would never put Stalin on my team, because I know that's going too far.
Right.
I wouldn't have done that. And if it just even putting like people, and I named 2 people in particular, those 2 were executed by Stalin in 1938. I specifically chose the least controversial people I could think of and keep the theme of the team. I get it when you do that. Like on my last stream, I encountered someone who named their team a racial slur, like in Blood Bowl 2, and these dudes, and I asked one of the admins, and they just said, "Yeah, no, this has got to go." And I thought it had to go because it was taking it too far. It was the racial slur for African American people. Just the I was taken out, and that's just, I think when you're doing that,
yeah,
and when you're having things like this, you're using your fun to ruin other people's fun. If people do get a sick, twisted sense of fun from that.
yes.
Where if you're using your space to remove someone else's, I think that's when it becomes a problem in Blood Bowl. And let's not even saying it's an extreme, like the George Soros thing. I thought that was funny, but you have to err on the side of caution because there are people who genuinely think he's a lizard person. And I can see how people do get offended by that because George Soros is Jewish.
Yeah.
And Jewish people still face a lot of adversity today. And I personally, to me, I think it's because he's called Soros, because he's a Soros. That's how I took it, but I get how you could find that offensive, and I think
absolutely.
that's 100%
there are connotations there back through the people that talk about lizards' invasion of the world. There's a lot of links to people that talk about anti-Semitism, and one has to be aware of some of those if you're trying to draw.
It's a very difficult line to make. I mean, from a person who writes rules for a reasonable sized community, it's incredibly difficult to find the line. And I mean, yes, by doing those rules, we're restricting some jokes, right? But at some point, you need to realize that, okay, yes, I think it's fun. Some other people might not think it's fun. And is it worth having that on the site just because I think it's funny? Probably not. It's just better to make my community a place for everyone.
But come on, mate, it's only banter, isn't it?
Yeah,
is this not just Bantersaurus? Is this not?
Sure, I mean, it is just banter, but in order to make this fair for everyone, and again, the aspect of being able to tell the staff that this is okay and this is not, that line is important. Consistency across the staff team is incredibly important, and that means that the lines need to be very crisp for things like this.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that it's actually I'm not that interested in what your intention was. I'm interested in the impact that it had. And if the impact is to cause offence, if the impact is to alienate people, I think that's much more important than I was having a laugh and I have the right to crack a joke.
Yeah.
Plus, if you were trying to crack a joke and it caused offence, then you didn't have the impact you intended. So you need to own that impact.
I think that last bit is the key bit.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to make a joke. If someone's horrifically offended by it, it's not a joke anymore. It's like Whereas if you make a joke and lots of people laugh, it's probably okay, you know. But that context and line is really difficult, isn't it? You know, and writing rules, you have to write a set of rules that can't really judge that, right? You know, there isn't a was it really funny rule in you know you can write.
Yeah, and it's also subjective, which makes it very difficult to maintain consistency. Because I mean, staff come and go. That's just a fact of how it is.
Yes. Someone was trying to persuade me, talking about living on Twitch streams and not having a life. A Twitch stream I enjoy going on is Artemis Black. Some people find him strong and at times offensive, crossing the line into areas they don't believe he should be saying or discussing. I mean, to me, I would describe him as the South Park of Blood Bowl, that his heart, I believe, is in the right place, but the material he sometimes uses is going to cause some people offence. I almost think it should have that kind of warning up front. But isn't it okay to cross some boundaries to try and entertain and have fun and play Blood Bowl? And some people will want that sort of community. Isn't that their right?
I mean, you know, that argument leads towards, you know, well, the racists should have their community as well, right? That's not a great argument, is it?
No.
But yeah, I'm not saying Artemis is. I'm saying, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Neutral.
Honest. I mean, what you got to do, you know, when we have people. I mean, sadly, there are people with very, very unhealthy and very undemocratic opinions who do play Blood Bowl, and they are okay with that. I mean, every community's got Nazis. I mean, there was that Warhammer tournament in Spain recently, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can easily find it. It's where a player bought a Nazi-themed team, and people refused to play him, and the TOs thought it was appropriate to award that player with wins.
And I've said it on the Fumble podcast that if someone sat down opposite me with a Nazi-themed team, I wouldn't want to face it. I think that's
No,
beyond my taste boundary.
I think when you let one in, because they always try to push the limit of what's acceptable behavior in the community, and you have to take care of this immediately, and you have to do it. Which, like, again, when you have a team that was Nazi named and fumbled, it could have been, you know, a very innocent, as much as I doubt it,
It wasn't.
attempt. Yeah, but it's trying to push it so they can see how much they can get away with.
100% it was that. Yeah.
And that was the whole thing. And definitely the picture of Hitler is a big press X the doubt moment. But you can't.
But it was hours of all of us in admin agonizing about isn't defending free speech as important as defending a space for everyone to feel free within?
Well, if you're advocating for a group who use their free speech to advocate for the genuine removal, the physical removal of other people, people like myself, for instance, I don't think it's free speech anymore, personally.
I remember a long night of me and Krista typing back and forth for hours, and I think that was pretty much one of the sentences we said is, we're arguing here about our right to defend Nazis.
It's it's Karl Popper's tolerance paradox. Should you be tolerant of the intolerant?
Yeah.
Personally, I think the answer is no.
Okay, now let's bring it on to. I want to talk about CNA specifically because it happened and because I was there. But also, I think a wider context and a wider discussion is appropriate because I don't believe in a hierarchy of oppression. I don't want to talk about a single issue and not talk about the wider issue of representation and inclusion and diversity. If we do, CNA was launched with a lot of the same sort of language, which I think may be one of the issues that you were using, Neutral, in terms of celebrating Blood Bowl 2 and representing the community and a fun event to mark, you know, the passing of this game. And then at the same time was listed as the World Cup on one website.
Yeah.
And at the
As
same
an
time,
invite-only tournament.
as an invite-only, you know, national all-stars tournament.
National, we'll call it that.
With both nations and regions and continents represented. A captain chosen from each of 12 geographical areas, let's call them that, some of which were of multiple sizes. And they selected a team of 5 people. Now, I got involved, first of all, I was asked to come on the commentary side. From there, because a lot of the team captains, and indeed me and the other person, Yakiste, who were asked to come in on the commentary side, thought the rule set wasn't particularly good. We did get involved in sort of talking about the rule set. And I can't tell a lie, from then on I was on the inside of the discussions about it forming. And whilst I cancelled, I thought they were going at it a little quick and they should perhaps take their time and really make sure they nailed what they wanted to do before it went live. I did have a chance to say which of these competing strands is what this tournament is trying to be. And whilst people that know me know that's the sort of question I would normally ask, I didn't. So for the first sort of week, when during the announcement stream, we have, I guess for maybe a year now, had an increasing number of female streamers within the Blood Bowl 2 space. I think you were a pioneer there to some degree, but since then we've had several others. And I personally have been a huge fan of that. I think, again, not because they're female streamers, but because it broadens the range of Blood Bowl and the face of Blood Bowl as it's presented to the world. And I think that's great for bringing more people into the hobby and giving them a space they feel comfortable to talk about or play Blood Bowl. But several of those people were in the stream and said, this doesn't feel very inclusive. We didn't know it was happening. We weren't asked. And I don't think when these teams were considered, we were even thought about. I don't think they were necessarily calling for tokenism. Let's have a woman on every team. That is how we have a representation. I think that what they were saying largely was there's a systemic issue here where the same sorts of names are cropping up, and we don't believe female names would have been considered in this context. Since then, time rumbled on. A member of Team England said they didn't fancy the competition for unrelated reasons, and Misspelled Tree, who's qualified for several chalices lately with Wood Elves, was asked by Rick Reckless, the captain of Team England, to step up and play Wood Elves for Team England, which she has done successfully for a win both for herself and for Team England in the first round of CNA.
Two wins, I think.
No, we've run the round. I don't know if the second round has been drawn yet, so I don't know if she's had a.
She's on the table. She's showing us 2 wins at the moment. On the
That may be because Team England had 2 wins, 2 draws, and then the final game was played yesterday, which was also a win for Shawnee, and we went to 3 wins and 2 draws, and obviously winning that first round. So that's what happened. Lots of people talking about diversity and inclusion within that competition, and hence within Blood Bowl 2 and competitions in general, which is why I wanted to cycle around to it tonight. However, whilst we were doing that, we did also forget that Chug Manmilk, who is, I think, openly bisexual, was on one of the teams representing the Celtic nations, or the England B team, as some people jovially referred to them as.
Not jovially.
What did we all make of all of that? Was it as bad as everyone said, or are we? And I'm going to again quote, as I've been trying to play devil's avocado, some of the questions I'm asking, obviously I hope people realise do not necessarily represent my opinions. Are we just a bunch of, the specific quote was, you'll get some bearded, woke leftists, won't you, PC? And you'll sit there and talk about how you can solve all the problems of diversity in Blood Bowl when there isn't even an issue and nothing will change. Is that what we're doing?
You two can go first. I'm inseparable from this situation, so let's hear from the other people first.
I'm happy to start because there's 2 things going on here, aren't there? First of all, there is how the tournament itself was organised. It was invitational. It's basically a bunch of streamers were asked to be captains. Coincidentally, the kind of choose the best national team is not really as entirely honest. I've also got to hold my hand up as well. I saw some of the discussion of one of the captains asking about who he should be picking, and I didn't think you should be inclusive. I just saw a list of names being discussed and kind of accepted that they were all good coaches and thought he was going for the best coaches. I'm not entirely certain that even the team captains have picked the best, anywhere near the best streamers in their region, let alone the best CCL people in their region. There's some biases going on, obviously, because that's what happens when you have an invitational and you choose a captain and the captain picks what will eventually be their friends mostly, right? And then there's the inclusion thing, which is, Blood Bowl is 99.9% white male.
Is it? The statistics for this podcast from Spotify gave me quite an accurate breakdown. They tell me I have a 96% male listenership, 3% female, and 1% identifying as non-binary. I didn't know you were a fan, Neutral, but thanks.
No problem. I'm actually not non-binary, so sorry. I don't even watch it. Sorry.
So, well, you're not in my 3% then either.
No, I'm not.
is this? I mean, that was another thing this chap said, and I'm trying to represent it whilst not agreeing. But is it surprising that a hobby like Blood Bowl is dominated by straight white men? Isn't that? Is it maybe not the case just that this isn't the sort of hobby that's going to appeal to a wider demographic? Are we solving a non-problem?
Not doing ourselves any favors by not even giving it a shot.
Yeah.
Genuinely. I mean, why don't we have? I mean, I think a cafe team would be brilliant. Like, just again, even just they've done this, and like you can see this gets more people involved in communities. When like a game like For Honor released the Chinese faction, because to me, I thought it was cool because hey, we don't do a lot of China.
Yeah.
They have a very interesting and unique history, so let's get them involved. And yeah, you can cynically say, okay, it's to appeal to the market base, which yeah, we know this is done in movies like Transformers and Star Wars now. I get those arguments and they do hold water. At the same time, this needs to not be so Eurocentric because when you think of like the races in Blood Bowl, we have High Elves, Britain, we have the Empire, very obviously Germany, Bretonia, France. These are all very Eurocentric areas, and yes, we have Araby, we have Ind, and we have all these areas, but like your Mesoamericans are a non-humanoid race that don't even speak words that we can understand. Where we kind of fall into this fantasy trope where different cultures are just different creatures. And I'm going to say I do like that. I do like lizardmen a lot. They're one of my favorite races because I like that they see themselves as the most civilized people on the planet and they're the oldest of the civilizations. I think that's cool. At the same time, I can also think it's kind of, I don't want to use it. What do the kids say? Cringe? It's kind of cringe at the same time.
This is on you and I, isn't it, Courtney? You're old enough to have been around and understand.
I mean, I was literally just thinking that GW in the 80s probably was quite racist.
Yeah, I mean, inherently racist in everything they do.
The map of the old world was, and you're bringing up Cathay, before the Cathay were not,
No.
a positive stereotype at all.
No, it was an occasionally thrown in racist joke rather than a sort of developed force.
I was trying to neglect those to try to remain positive. But
And I think even the original orcs were sort of based both on Native Americans, but also with a sort of patois.
I've always thought they were based on British people. Well, I've always thought the orcs were British.
Yes, maybe the football drinking hooligan aspect of that.
That's always what I've gotten from them.
Games Workshop, I think, was very much how the average 70s male saw the world, but represented as fantasy figures.
I mean, like
is it important we move away from that then? Is that a dark history Blood Bowl needs to own and move past?
I mean, like, there's nothing to say we sucked in the past a little bit, and maybe we can suck less now. Like, it doesn't mean we're bad now. It just means we can be better. I think we're good, but we can be great. Why stop with good? Just keep going better. I don't see the point. If you even want to put it in the most cynical part of this argument, I do not see a point of hamstringing yourself from half of the gender. Roughly, because, non-binary, I don't know the statistics personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people like me make up a very small percent of the population. Trans women are not as... A, we're not as numerous as you think, and B, there are probably more trans men than trans women. So, take that what you will. And we have, So
I'm here you arguing for diversity on a positive financial basis on one level, but against it on the other.
No, I'm completely for it.
Yeah. Look, I'm with you. I also think I think it's a good way to make money. I think there's profit in diversity, in growing a player base, in appealing wider, in appealing across those national boundaries as well as other protected characteristics.
I'd rather it not be just for the money and we do it because we're good people.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd like to think we're doing it because we like other humans.
Businesses are not good people. Businesses like money.
Yeah, and if we want to boil it down to the most base, cynical, and capitalistic, almost animalistic nature, then yeah, money.
Isn't that very 2022? Isn't that where we are?
Isn't that still the current year?
It's imminent. I'm just that 3 weeks ahead. I'm just thinking to the future.
Oh, I thought you said 2020, and I was like, are we still in 2020? I was like, no, it feels like it.
I don't know. Time hasn't passed for me for about 2 years. Except I grew a beard, which everyone says makes me look 15 years older. So I guess in some ways I have leapt forward in time. Krista, is diversity about marketing or is it about good spaces?
I think both. To be brutally honest, for companies, it's marketing. Of course, it is. Everything is marketing in the Western world, unfortunately. But it can be both at the same time. It's not one or the other. It's probably both. Because, I mean, to me, in an ideal world, we shouldn't be talking about improving diversity and talking about this in general. It should just be prevalent everywhere. It's not about gender. It's not about race. It's not about. I mean, we're all people. That's what in my opinion, we should be striving for, to make this a non-issue. Let people be who they are, and we're just all people.
Yeah, another going back to the person I spoke to, and I think you can probably guess who that was, Krista. One of the reasons they said they left Fumble was they didn't feel included. And then when they heard about the thing that had happened on Blood Bowl 2, they watched the stream back. And one of the points they wanted to very forcibly make is, however, they did it in a very toxic way. They said, I think the female Blood Bowlers need to be aware if they go to a tabletop tournament, the men there will be more scared of them than they are of the men. It's like a spider. They are much more frightened of you than you are of them. I thought that was sort of missing the point, but they were talking about safe spaces, and do tournaments and sort of rooms full of Blood Bowl players feel like a safe space for other people to arrive to? I guess it was one of my concerns when I first played on a tabletop is, when I'm standing outside of the room, am I going to look at a room full of people and think I don't belong in that group of people? Isn't that for all of us, and shouldn't it be something we're trying to change for everyone, not just for this, this running up the flag diversity people are trying to salute to? And how do we make that? How do we make tournaments people feel comfortable coming to?
I don't know. It's incredibly hard. I mean, when I go to tournaments, I feel nervous. I'm an introvert by heart, and going into a group of new people that I don't really know, I've seen their names. I've talked to some of them. I mean, such as yourself, for example. But I mean, it's difficult to meet up with people in general. For a lot of a lot of people are introverts, and especially in this space, I think. I mean, on Fumble, it's a very niche game. People are playing this. They're For a very long time, people are like embarrassed to say that they play miniature games, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you're sort of trying to hide that from everyone, and that usually means that that demographic is introverts, especially online, where you have the additional screen of just being behind a computer. You're just a name, and then meeting up people in real life, that can be hard. It's something that I've been working at for myself, and becoming more extrovert and being able to talk to people. And I mean, speaking English, which is not my native language, all that kind of stuff. It's difficult.
And are we talking about inherent gatekeeping or those personal issues? Which do we think that's the bigger barrier?
I mean, from my perspective, personal barrier is for me the tougher part. Is that the same for everyone in the community? I don't know. Maybe.
Neutral, I'd asked you before in the part of the stream where nothing was working, which I had to desperately fix. I asked you if you'd ever played tabletop, and you were amazed I'd asked and looked somewhat scornful at the concept. How
I'm
do we
not
get
gonna
you into a
play.
room rolling dice?
I'm not gonna play in a tabletop tournament surrounded by Floridians. You out of your mind?
Okay, so is
You're
it
out of
your
your.
regional local prejudice that's preventing you?
Oh yeah, probably. I mean, Soul wouldn't beat everybody. So I said if Soul can beat everyone, I might as well not go.
For those that don't know, we're talking about Sol, a notable other Floridian Blood Bowl streamer.
Oh, I'm
Who
from Chicago. Don't do that to me.
recently has ventured out onto the tabletop and describes himself as the dominant force in Floridian tabletop Blood Bowl now. That
To be
doesn't
fair,
tempt you to
didn't he
to
just
seize that crown?
You can have it. I don't want it. I'm already tall enough without a crown. I'm
didn't he
assuming
just
I'm the
win
tallest one
TSD as
here.
well?
He just won TSD, did he?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which he took one skill less to ensure that he didn't have to roll a random race and he could go in with Skaven, and has been really dominant with them. I think he would absolutely own the name
No,
as
he was
Skaven main.
humans.
Was he human? I
He
thought
was
he took.
humans. Yeah.
He
No,
took
he
random this time.
randomed.
Okay. Well,
Good for
congratulations,
him.
Sol. I mean, he's another person on a bit of a unique mission, isn't he, in terms of how he rolls 300 teams, and if after the third game he doesn't love them, just straight in the bin and gets another one. Which seems a very, very different atmosphere to how you're trying to play neutral to me. I think you two are from the same state, such near neighbours, and yet so very different personality-wise.
We're about an hour away. So yeah, we're in the same region. I used to play local Smash 4 pools actually, and he used to play Smash 4. So we more or less came from the exact same spot. I used to play competitive Gears of War as well. I'm a reformed first-person shooter player, and sadly, I'm not as good as I used to be. So if you run into me in Halo, don't worry, you'll get some free XP.
I mean, well, this is the perfect thing about Blood Bowl, and perhaps somewhere we are very inclusive, is for the older gamer. Because it doesn't require those lightning fast reflexes, does it? So someone as as old as I am
I mean, I've
can
been
still
playing
play
video
Blood
games.
Bowl.
I've been playing video games over 20 years. I'm old. That's over 20 years of my life right there.
Yeah, I can probably add 35 years of how long I've been playing video games, but not all of them online,
yeah.
of course.
Because online didn't exist when we started playing video games.
No, it really didn't.
PC was in the room with Gary Gygax when he developed D&D for the first time. There with him.
You joke about
so
that,
actually,
but I was
yeah.
there. I remember when it was released, so that is a thing. And I have a friend who is actually he now lectures in games design, and his head lecturer and the person that taught him was Ian Livingstone, who is the other one of the other great designers of gaming as a thing. No one gamed before Gary Gygax and Ian Livingstone came into the world, obviously. What do we do about diversity? I mean, what was wrong with CNA? How do we move forward? We are, four wise people. How do we solve this?
You're asking a really, really long. What's wrong with CNA? I mean,
No
outside
more
of
invitationals.
No,
Let's
look,
start
there's a
with
lot of
that.
there's a lot of.
Let's do that.
Okay, so what? Yes, because then I'll just pick my mates.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
problem.
But I like my
Well, I think
mates,
that
and they're
was-
good at Blood Bowl. Why is that a problem?
well, I mean, not everyone did the same thing as you, and not everyone was told to do the same thing as you.
Okay.
And I think what I think was the biggest offensive thing, and I think with some people was I think some coaches felt wrongly accused of because there was someone who stirred a lot of shit. My name was in this before I even knew it was a thing. People were already talking about me in it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know it was a thing. I was on a friend's stream talking to him, and all of a sudden I got like, "Oh yeah, did you know you weren't invited to CNA?" And I'm like, "What the hell is CNA? Like, what the hell is this?" And first of all, I decline all invitational tournaments as a general rule of thumb. I only accepted Super League because I wanted to play a certain coach, and I wasn't finding him in CCL. That's the only reason I played it, and we ended up in the wrong groups. So, go figure. So I said, all right, that sucked. Let's never do that again. I refuse to do invitationals. I also further refuse to represent the United States in any international competition. So, sorry, I'm not. I don't care if it's for one viewer or a million. I won't represent the U.S.
Okay.
So,
if
I mean,
we
that was
took
kind.
nations out and you could sign up with a team of your own choosing, would you have been in?
No, it's invitational. I would have still said no. I don't care. If it's invitational, it's just a circle jerk between people about how good they are at the game. At that rate, it's a dice game. Let's just embrace that about the game. It's not as good as we think it is. Like in terms of skill, like skill matters, but it's a dice game at the end of the day, guys. Like,
Yeah.
We don't need to take it so seriously. And I think kind of the issue was we made it with nations. Specifically, I know the Gdanik situation was a thing where, by including him in NA, you took away a spot from somebody else. So nobody wins in that situation.
For those that don't know, North America was both the USA and also Canada, though not Mexico. Mexico was thrown into South America for the event, and then to sort of replace it, they gave them Oceania, and I think Asia, Africa, and Antarctica as well. But certainly they were allowed anyone from Oceania, and they took one coach from Oceania.
It's very cynically just a move to include Gdanik, in my opinion, which is fine. He's good and he should be included in these events. I'm not trying to take that away from him. And I think it's unfair that he's in a shit situation being from Australia. That's not his fault being from Australia. But at the same time, I think if it was just
Blood Bowl coaches in Australia, they could have let there be an Australian team, surely.
Well, they probably could have, and maybe take it up with them. They probably should have. I'm a bit weird about this. I thought maybe maybe Mr. Page could have been in there if you asked him.
But was it a problem for you and Corn Knight and Krista hearing about it now? I know on a format that isn't something you're massively familiar with. Is it a problem that nobody asked women to be on their teams?
I think it's not a problem with each individual. I think it's a problem with the way that they did it.
Right.
But like I can see if you're organising an invitational and you pick six team leaders, it's not terrible that you haven't picked a woman. And then if they each individually don't pick a woman, that's also kind of not their fault either. It does look bad when you look at everyone and you go, oh, they're all men. So that's the trouble, isn't it? And that, really does reinforce the, boys club idea of invitationals.
But as I said, isn't it a boys' club? Don't we live with 95% of Blood Bowl being boys of not great social skills, not great at interacting? They're going to be a bit awkward, and that's going to create just inherently quite an environment that pushes people that aren't like that to the outside, isn't it? Is that solvable?
Well, one thing I wanted to say last was watching the episode last 2 weeks ago with Greg and Gregster. Well, what's his name?
Gegster, whose real name is Paul.
Sorry. Yeah,
and Purple Goo, whose real name is
who both said the tabletop space was a chance for them to get away from their families. And I thought that was kind of, an interesting comparison that maybe, they were both, family people, but also that they were both going into that space with the expectation of not having to deal with anything like that. And I think that's, maybe a problem. Like, is that part of the problem? Should it be, should it be expected that there are children there and that you can't kind of get away from home life quite as much on those weekends?
I think that's a very good question. I would say the same. I go to a football team. I'm a season ticket holder. If asked, that's one of the things I'd say is it gives me a chance to get away from my family. But who gets me away to is my brother. So in some ways, I'm getting away from family. But that is again into quite a male group, though one of the group that goes with us is female. Then, actually, last time I went to the Arsenal, no, the time before, I went straight on from the Arsenal, took my partner out, and went to the ballet. There was certainly a more diverse audience at the football than there was at the ballet, in terms of just representative of British society. But aren't there lots of spaces that are quite exclusive to people that just don't want to go there? Isn't that a thing? Or are we stopping them going? I think Blood Bowl should be for everyone. I'm not on that side of what I'm saying, but I think it's worth it.
Both your examples have attempted to get other people in, right? The football has definitely done a lot about not being a bunch of blokes swearing on a terrace, and the opera has attempted to get people who aren't spending, £150 a ticket to come and watch opera. Maybe we should be doing the same in Blood Bowl. We should be actually positively trying to get people who aren't white male beardy 40-year-olds to come and play.
Neutral, are we being fair? Is Blood Bowl for white beardy 40-year-olds, or should it be for everybody?
It certainly looks like it at times, doesn't it? I mean, if we're going to take it in as cynical, it looks like it's definitely changed. We definitely have had new people. I mean, I'd love to see more. Hell, I'd love to see a trans guy stream this game. I would love nothing more than to see that personally. But I think we're getting better. Like, I think it's getting better. I've never felt unwelcomed here. And I'm going to have to say that with an asterisk now. I've never felt unwelcomed until Nations League was announced. And then I had to sat down and I asked myself, am I really welcome in this community? And for a few days, I genuinely felt no. Because I think it's brought out something I think we have to discuss. Is when we started getting pushed back to that boys club, it brought out some really ugly opinions from some people. And, maybe we can move on from this. I'm sure hoping we can.
I'm really hoping so too, but I felt we couldn't do this and not talk about it, so I'm sorry if that's difficult. How does it make you feel when people you're playing a game with are voicing opinions that seem to make you feel this isn't where I should be?
I mean, it definitely makes you want to leave. I mean, it's like you have people you look at and you talk to them and you think, like, I've hung out with this person for months and now I don't want anything to do with them. And it sucks. It really sucked. And I feel like, not everyone, I think especially what had me that was when a captain came to me and they were like, hey, they opened off with this and they said, do you think I'm a misogynist? And I was so taken back by this. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Why? And it's like, because I didn't pick you. And I was like, no, I didn't even get asked. And I would have said no anyways. And I told them that's why I assumed you weren't going to pick me, because I would have said no.
Yeah.
I've turned down almost every single invitational I've been invited to. I don't get why this is an issue. And for a while, I thought the conversation was going together. I was trying to tell them why people are angry. It's not an attack on you. And by the end of it, unfortunately, it just felt to me, with the way they worded it, realistically, all they were cared about was their reputation. Because, it was always, well, I'm glad you don't think I'm a bad person was the last thing they said.
Mm.
And at that rate, it really I didn't know what to say. What do you say to that? They didn't come to me, seeking, team advice or to commentate a game. They asked me for basically confirmation that they weren't a bad person. I mean, I felt like an object.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like I was trying to validate someone's existence that way. It sucked and it hurt a lot.
Hopefully that was someone inappropriately and inelegantly trying to not have that impact. But again, if
I
they
don't
listen
think
to
they
this,
were,
I think
but
they need to own the impact as well as the intention, which we talked about earlier.
it really sucked.
Well, look, I'm really sorry for that. I'm sorry we're putting you back in this situation. You know that I would like it stated this, that you and I were going to have you on. We've been talking about this for 7 weeks, finding a slot that was convenient to us both to get you on. So I'm really sorry we've put you in that situation, Jolene. But it is, as we've just been talking about, really important that we do have this conversation. I spent the first few days after that stream with the CNA sort of denying that I had any responsibility and saying that I was just there to talk to them about the rule sets. But I was on the inside when some of those decisions were taken. I wasn't chatting actively in them, but I was there, and I had an opportunity to say, this doesn't seem like you were selling it. It doesn't seem very inclusive. It doesn't seem very celebratory. And it's led to all of these impacts that I feel partly responsible for. So I did want to come around and address this, but I'm upset we're causing distress. Are we? Where do we go from here, Krista? Because you're the same as me. You believe in trying to have inclusive spaces, but
Yeah, I think that
do we just move on and just make them happen, or do we need to be this confrontational and talk about it?
well, I think talking about it and not sticking your head in the sand is important. Because if you stick your head in the sand, nothing's going to change. It really isn't. And to an extent, I mean, it's not really up to individuals to fix this. It's more on a systemic level. So I think that to get this to start the process of solving this, maybe we need large organizations opening up and showing that, okay, maybe we are not as inclusive as we should be. Maybe we should try to push that image more and say that, okay, we specifically invite people who are not in this middle-aged guy group, and take all the negative publicity about doing this because token whatever. But somewhere we have to break this circle and begin, I think. And maybe it's up to the larger organizations to take the first step.
Yeah.
And
to keep taking steps, some of which won't necessarily be the right ones. I mean, I think we can all look, for example,
sure.
at Blood Bowl 2 and say, I hope if that was made today, the decisions taken about the Amazon race would be taken differently. I don't know many people that are comfortable when they look at and listen to what was, depicted from the Amazons. And I think just saying, oh, the Norse are depicted the same way is not engaging with the fact that if you look at society, over-sexualized images of women are portrayed to us so much more often than over-sexualized images of men are. That to be perpetuating that isn't the same just by balancing it with some images of men. It's not.
The Norse aren't making the same noises, though, are they?
No, they're not making the same noises, and it's not as much of a societal issue. Look through any magazine, whether it's targeted at male or female, and I bet you that 19 out of 20 over-sexualized images will be of women in all media. It's a more prevalent thing. I remember during the reveal stream for Blood Bowl 3, something that really struck me at the time, as someone that's worked in diversity, it's an echo of what you hear quite often. I'm not going to name them, but one female Blood Bowl 2 player was in the stream, and they waited their time, and they asked the question, when you release the Wood Elves, are we going to have a choice of female player models? And they didn't get the answer they wanted. Basically, the answer was, no, you'll be lucky if we give you any models at all. Take what you're given. You'll be lucky if there's a game, let alone if there's female models for the Wood Elves. And they were disappointed about that and said that upset them. And it meant they were less interested in the game. And there was a remark, not on that stream, but in another Discord I'm in, and I didn't challenge it at the time, and I wish I had, saying, isn't it typical that a woman comes forward and all she cares about is there a female figure in this game I want to play? And I think there's a big point there, which I think is why I wanted to talk about the names on Fumble with Krista. If people don't see representation of things that they want to feel are representing them, they're not going to feel attracted by that game, are they?
Yeah, I agree.
To be fair, Blood Bowl 1 had female war lancers. That's where it comes from, right?
Yeah.
So Cyanide have made female characters in previous Blood Bowl games outside of the Amazon team.
But I thought it was also an interesting response to automatically see, a woman asking for female representation in the pieces, and to see that as typical, like we hear that all the time, which I'd never heard it before. But that idea again of, if it doesn't represent me, am I really feeling I'm part of this? That this is somewhere I should be and should feel comfortable, is really important. But I do hope that, when it comes to the story that Jolene was brave enough to share with us, that it's an impact that didn't match the intention, and someone that was trying to be inclusive but ended up actually making someone feel excluded by the way they tried to evidence that.
Comic books. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
Comic books
come
with this
back in.
question. There was a character. I don't know if you're familiar with the Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
The Blue Beetle is a Puerto Rican superhero. It helped actually improve comic book sales amongst Puerto Rican communities and Hispanic communities because they had someone to look up to. Because think of it, comic books. If you read comic books prior to the Blue Beetle, everyone's like white, and there's definitely a few, black characters. You have Black Panther, Luke Cage. Absolutely, they were there, but Puerto Rican having that Hispanic character meant so much. And we're seeing a lot of the pushback today when we get gay characters that we got back then. It's just been dressed in different language now. It matters, and yeah, like Amazons, I think, are a huge thing. You look at and you're like, okay, this kind of sucks. The only woman team we get are half naked people who moan at you in very lewd ways. That's not in the North. Again, excellent point. The Norse don't do that. Amazons are just Norse but women. That's their lore. That's their gimmick because they have dodge. And I've even seen dumb people suggest on the internet women players should have lower strength or something, because it's a fucking board game. It's a fucking board game at the end of the day.
Yeah, with elves, orcs, and chainsaws. This is not.
Well, it's like the thing and this is not just a Blood Bowl unique thing. We get it, when I grew up playing video games, you're in the glorious year of 2009, and everybody looks like the guy from Infamous. It's just some white dude in his 30s who looks like he'll smoke a pack of cigarettes 2 times a day. Some bald white dude who's got a girlfriend that tragically dies halfway through the story.
Yeah.
Seen it once, saw it 20 times in the same year. And we get this, and we've moved on.
I'm even a bit tired of how when we change tropes, we find new tropes that are just instantly I'm bored of too. I mean, yes, we now have kick-ass women in science fiction television shows, but now every science fiction show has a kick-ass woman at its central lead character. And the camera's still objectifying her. She still doesn't have agency of her own. There's still a lot of male agency involved in what she's doing. There's now the hunky, educated black man with the goatee but his top off, and I'm a bit tired of seeing that one too. Can we just not have a range of different characters telling me all sorts of different stories? And that interests me, but I don't seem to be well served by that. But at the same time, a more diverse palette than there was 15 years ago, I think, is still a good thing. Is this a positive for us, that this is a good conversation to be having, that it's going to bring Blood Bowl into the modern age, and that the direction of travel is forwards? Is that the hope we can offer the Twitcherati that are with us this evening?
We have to. We can't just, like Krista said, we can't just bury our heads and pretend it's not going to away. This wound's going to fester if we don't just deal with it now. You don't sit there and let the infection kill you. You got to move forward with it, and I think we're making progress. And I think it's getting better. I kept streaming Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
I came on today because I had to.
Well,
I thought I was emotionally prepared, but
yeah, I'm sorry, Jolene. We talked about this beforehand. We need to talk about the tough issues, and you've been very brave in doing so. I'm horrified I've put you on this spot. As you know, it was never my original intention.
I chose to do this. I could have said no.
Yeah.
And I knew this was going to happen. But
I
you
do want
gotta.
to. I do want to wrap this up. I don't want them all to end up 2-hour marathons, and it being Christmas. We've all got things on and family to talk to. I haven't been that brilliant about trying to bring up points from the floor. Um, One thing I wanted to talk about that was mentioned a little bit in chat, but I can't grab the entire context from it now, is the word context, and that we're talking about rules and different contexts. Is that a thing that if we're doing something very publicly and openly, we need to be even more careful that it's for everybody? But if I'm running a league of 5 people, is it kind of fine that I'm not thinking about these issues, or should they be universal?
I mean, we're talking about. I mentioned this in the chat. We're talking about a game platform that is international, right? Both
Yeah.
Fumble and Blood Bowl 2, all over the world, and the differences between what one nation finds offensive and like even two nations that speak the same language, like America and England, have very differing views on what terrible language is, right? And Australia as well, obviously. You know, you do have to have a if you're catering for all those bits of the world, you have to write a rule set that deals with that, right? That copes with it, I should say.
Yes, there are. I mean, there are contextual and also cultural issues at play here. Another issue that cropped up with CNA was to do with some humorous banter between two of the teams that were going to face each other, involving some allegations as to past behaviour on the Blood Bowl 2 client using different interfaces like the PlayStation. But a word that was used in riposte to that caused great offence and was challenged. Because I think when we looked deep into that, the person on the receiving end that was English as a native speaker found the word deeply offensive and would have challenged it in any environment. The person using it was very much English as a foreign language, and it was a direct translation of a word they would be comfortable using in public in their language. But in that translation, it took on a slightly different meaning and connotation that when it was explained to them, they were happy to apologise for. Do we just sort of need to understand that we're all getting this wrong all the time and give that room to explain and understand? Is that?
I mean, it got blown out of proportion because it was two teams kind of facing off against each other and trying to
Yes.
be a bit offensive, right?
Yes, and two
Uh,
quite explosive individuals.
yeah, who are both happy to be a bit bombastic, let's
Mm.
say. But the word, what was the word again? The words, I've forgotten the
The word
exact
was retard as a form of
retard,
retarded. Yes.
which was actually what I was thinking of when I was thinking about different nations because I think there's a movement to make retard more offensive in America, but it's a lot more commonly used than in England. Whereas in England, it's been pretty offensive for a while. Um, so I think that highlights the kind of linguistic thing even more so because it was used by someone who wasn't, English wasn't their first language.
Yeah.
That I know what nation did it as soon as you said that word.
I mean,
Is it?
there are times. I mean, I do hope, Jolene, that was the situation with you. That captain was trying to be positive, supportive, and inclusive, and may learn a lesson here about what
I
that
hope
looks
so.
like and feels like, because it clearly wasn't that impact. We're going to make
Yeah, I
mistakes as we try and address this, aren't we? Are we going to have to give ourselves that space too, or do we need to leap
we gotta.
forwards?
I mean, I don't think they were trying to be hurtful, and I really hope they weren't. So I'm going to assume they weren't,
Yeah.
because I'd like to live in that world.
Well, I mean,
And it's I the thing is I want to talk about the positive criticisms I want to have with nations. Like we don't need to do it nations. Like maybe we could do it like captains. You pick from a pool, you have fun, so we can build on this and do it better next time. But unfortunately, we had individuals take it a bit explosively, to put it bluntly. Took this, and like I said, my name was brought up before I was even aware the situation was a thing. I didn't even know
yeah.
it was an issue, and it had already been going on. I didn't ask to get put into it. I just was.
Yeah, and I
And
mean that
that
it's something I've said too many times. I feel guilty about that. It's something when some people do know, some people don't. When I'm not acting, when I'm not playing Blood Bowl, I'm an actor. When I'm not acting, for 20 years run interactive training courses, and because interactive training is best around usually behavioural skills, I've ended up working a lot in diversity and inclusion. Something we habitually talk about is how tokenism feels at times appalling, but also how feeling that pressure to represent something. I mean, I wanted to bring Neutral on because they're a coach whose company I enjoy, who I know has some strong opinions, and I know wanted to talk about Blood Bowl to people, which is what One World, One Blood Bowl is all about. And in the end,
What
I've
about?
put you onto a seat and said, represent diversity for me. And that's
Yeah,
appalling. No one should play Blood Bowl thinking, I'm here to represent a community. You're here to play Blood Bowl, surely. Isn't there that
I mean,
unites us? Is that what we build from?
it wasn't the point of my stream. My stream was always to build a community for everybody, but it ended up being Blood Bowl. That was the game we settled on. That was the game that got everyone to. It gave me good numbers, and little tiny brains saw numbers up. That mean good. I kept playing Blood Bowl, and I've got some very fun opinions. Like Chaos Renegades are a top half team that are better than Chaos. I think Wood Elves aren't top 5. I think
You're wrong
Gutter
there,
Runners
but
are. I think Gutter Runners are better than War Dancers. I don't even think War Dancers are that good. I think Orc Blitzers are better players. I listen. I've got fun opinions on this game. I'll talk about it all day. Humans are better than Norse. That's not even an opinion. That's just a fact. And I'd love to talk about stuff like that.
yeah,
But unfortunately, this takes precedent, and it's not just me who's affected. It's a lot of different people. Because we do have women who try to get into this game, and and we should help them in there to feel comfortable. Not just me. I have a unique path. I'm a trans woman. I'm not going to have the same upbringing as most cis women, and I know that. And I live with that, and it's my life. And if you ask me if I go back and change it, I wouldn't, because I know who I am now, and I love that. And if I get seen as a figure of diversity, then fuck it, I'll embrace it.
yeah.
I'll just do that.
I think it's important to me, think about everyone that's listening to this, that's watching this with us right at the moment. Think about it when when you go into work, do you want to just go in and do your job, or when you go to have a drink, do you want to just go and have a drink, or do you want to be a representation of your community at that time? And then when you
I'm just using.
then when you engage with someone who is perhaps not what you normally engage with in Blood Bowl, have a think about that. Do I want to treat this person as a Blood Bowl coach, or do I want to look at the thing that's different about them and just respond to that the whole time?
I think sometimes I'm just trying to use the goddamn bathroom. I just want to use the bathroom.
And
That's
look,
what I want to do sometimes.
Look, I'm not going to pretend that any times I've felt excluded, it is even comparable or should even necessarily be mentioned the same breath as someone's lived experience, if that is every day. But a lot of people refer to my age a lot when it comes to Blood Bowl, and I genuinely don't necessarily feel excluded by it. But it is an area no one's ever asked if I am all right about it. People joke about me being old the whole time, and I am sort of all right about it. But I actually had something that it was the lovely Corn Knight, just in casual passing and trying to help me with something, made a comment there that did, at the time, I reacted quite badly to. And I had to think back on why, because normally someone takes the piss out of me, I laugh along, I do it too. And so I had to ask myself, well, why was someone I do like and that I know was just trying to be fun and actually be helpful and positive, but in a slightly jovial way, why did I bite at that when that isn't me? And we then had that chat, and I said, look, I'll be honest with you, I think it was about something that normally I don't bite back on, which is people laughing about my failing eyesight or my age. And I think that really is when I did. So I think, again, I've always said diversity is about everyone. It's not about one type of person. We say, oh, look, that is diversity. Diversity is everybody. It's all of us having a space to feel welcome in, isn't it?
Let's have a team for straight white dudes. Let's have a team for gay white dudes. Let's have a stream for gay black dudes. Let's have a team for everybody. Honestly, I don't mind it if you over-sexualize people. Just over-sexualize everyone equally. It's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking.
And indeed some woodland creatures, yes. I
It's
want the furries to be welcome in Blood Bowl.
It's
That's
a very
fine.
accepting community.
Don't forget Scalies. Scalies have that place as well.
Historically, a very LGBT-friendly community. Listen, it was not a thing I did. It was just a legal requirement. We have a council. The tallest trans woman in the state council gets to talk first. I go very early in the order typically because I'm 6'3", or for those of you who use communism units, about 190. I'm quite tall. I get it. So I do like to do this. That's not a real thing. For legal reasons, that's not a real thing. We don't have a council.
Yeah.
An underground shadowy cabal of
you had us all listen like, well.
It's a phrase I hate. It's a phrase I despise. This idea that let's talk to someone from the trans community. Like they all have meetings every Tuesday where they decide what all of them think collectively.
We have Chloe, another Zoe, a Luna, at least like 7 Lunas. And like, and all the Chloes, their names spelled differently every single time, and
Yeah.
their creativity is something you have to admire.
Yeah, if
But
you can get more than 2 U's in a Chloe, you've done well.
yeah, it's just it is what it is, and I like to take I like to joke about this. We have our own in jokes in the community, and sometimes I get people get to get privy to them. You get to.
Yeah.
I understand the magical term, the darkness. I know what it's like. I know it. If you don't get the darkness of certain communities, don't make the jokes about them.
I mean, this is the thing. Blood Bowl has always been a community. I've always said it's an inappropriate joke because I have deeply inappropriate humour at my very core. But I've always said you walk into a Blood Bowl tabletop tournament and you think this should be sponsored by the NHS. A lot of these people need to get out of the house. And they do. They genuinely they need that socialization, and it's something. I hope when Gangster and Purple Goo were talking about getting away from their families, I think that's what they mean. They just need a space that is different, that is other than their normal space, and that can be very good for the mental health. But I've always assumed that space was something we were offering to everyone, and I don't think it's uncomfortable enough. Like I said, I was on the inside of this and pretended for a while I wasn't. Just like I was for a while defending Nazis and then deciding to rule out Nazis. And I know which side of that I wanted to be on, and at times I felt I was on the wrong one. So some of this has caught me in a place I didn't want to be with it. And then I decided I needed to own that, except I was involved in those conversations, even if I was just there and not saying anything. The fact I didn't say anything makes me complicit. And there's never a bad time to look at ourselves and say, am I doing enough here to make the space I want to game in, which is a space that's welcoming to everybody? And if the answer's no, then you've got to do more. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think people can forgive you for the one thing, like incidentally, as long as your last name's not Mosley, I think you're fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it needs to be your abiding thought in every way you do everything within your life. But I do think it's not a bad question to ask yourself. Look, I do need to wrap up. It's Christmas. Let's give a joyful Christmas message for Blood Bowl. What is your Christmas present from Blood Bowl that you would like? For now, for the Blood Bowl 2, for the 2020 rule set, for Fumble, I don't care. Whatever you want. What Christmas present do you want Nuffle to give you from Blood Bowl? Corn Knight.
Another Weird Rules Tier 2 team from GW.
Okay. So
preferably elite
team, or
okay. The new Kislev Slan or something that's terrible and completely unplayable to most people.
I have a feeling Chris is going to want the exact opposite, as he is fantastic at keeping Blood Bowl Fumble up to date with the Blood Bowl Season 2 or Blood Bowl 2020 changes, pretty much as they're released. Christoph, what's your Christmas wish from Blood Bowl?
A better written rulebook.
A better written rulebook. You've hinted darkly that you think we'll get another rulebook in a couple of years. Do you think that's really true? Is that?
I don't know. I hope so. I love the current one. I think it's a really, really good step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it needs another iteration or two.
Okay. So a good step, but on a path, not the end of that road.
There are so many inconsistencies and confusing parts. And I mean, the fact that I have to write tables for when can you use which skills, it's ridiculous. That shouldn't be the case in a well-written rulebook. And I wish for a better one.
Have you added in the column I suggested of can I use this from the ground?
No.
It's not going to get easier. It's going to get harder, I bet you.
I know.
It's just they're going to find more.
Like I said, I think that they've done a good job. I think that they're going in the right direction. The rulebook before this was atrociously bad. Here they've tried to do keywording and like modern rule writing, and I just hope they continue.
And unfortunately, we haven't got anyone coming up out of chat today. I felt this might be explosive enough. I asked if anybody wanted to volunteer. Nobody did. So we are just going to wrap up here. Jolene, what can Father Nuffle bring you? What is your wish for Blood Bowl for the new year or for yourself?
Good mutation and passing skills for starters. Dear God, make those better. Monstrous Mouth, cool. I like that. Safe throw, why did that need to be nerfed? Why on earth did that need to be changed?
Didn't feel splitting safe throw into 3 different skills was worthwhile?
Did you ever take safe throw?
No.
Okay.
But now I can not take it 3 times.
That's true. Your Dwarf Runner can ignore passing
I
even
can
more.
ignore it 3 ways.
But at least it looks good in the tables now.
Oh, it looks great, yeah. It looks nice.
You mean the fact there's 12 of them, so all the tables are exactly
Yeah,
square?
no, that's
Exactly.
it's the only reason they did it, actually. Instead of just making
I think so
pass
too.
skills.
It's
I'm
someone's
serious.
OCD.
I thank you, Fumblerooski, the skill I will also never take.
Yeah.
I mean,
Alongside,
it was entirely for random skill generation, right? So
it
that they
was
could all be a
entirely, yeah.
D12 or whatever. And
Just
Yes, I mean, I think, and some of them, I've said this before, I think some of them, it got to quite late on a Friday afternoon and they just needed 3 more, and they went, sod it, armbar, and we'll split safe pass 3 ways. That's 12, isn't it? Great. Yeah, I've got a beer at 4, I'm off. And someone signed off on it, and that's what we've ended up with. Yeah, there are some terrible things in there. Though someone was talking down defensive earlier, I agree, we haven't seen anyone use defensive well so far, but I still think there's going to be a way somehow. There's going to be a meta where defensive is key to some plan. Isn't there?
the meta is when Blood Bowl 3 comes out and they haven't added in having to rebuy and teams start to get to like 3,000 TV. That's the point at which people start taking defensive. Before that, it's just not worth it. Especially
Fifth
like
take on my dwarf longbeards.
Yeah, like when there's the guard is a more direct, better pick, isn't it? Basically,
yeah.
in almost every case.
I forgot defensive was a skill until you brought it up. I
There we
actually
are.
forgot it was. I forgot it was. I remembered armbar before defensive.
That's the impact it's had in your figurative universe.
Didn't even
Armbar
notice
might be
that.
alright on Croxigors. Maybe.
I mean, as a 6 skill, maybe
Yeah.
if it gets there.
Random skills are fun. We should all
Random
take
skills
random
are
It's
skills.
not bad, honestly. Random skills on big guys actually make them pretty cost effective once they start getting SPP. It's not bad. You'll take thick skull for 10k.
I mean,
Hell, Rick will
yes,
take it for 30.
I agree with all of these things, but until Krista actually does some work on the client, so lazy, and
I know.
implements redrafting for us, I think that's going to shake the meta again. Whether we'll see as many randoms with redrafts or more, whether the value will be there in those double cost secondary skills, or saving up and taking an incredibly cheap AV, boost at 10 TV, is that suddenly quite sexy on things that are going to live on the line of scrimmage? And hence no bloat before you take that as well. No carrying any skills for things that don't often use them. I think we're going to see huge development when that comes in. That's what gets me excited. So to nobody in particular, that's my Christmas wish. To Nuffle. And we'll see. Maybe some point in the new year, my Christmas wish comes true. I am going to wrap it up there. I think we've had an interesting wander through the world of Blood Bowl, and one world, one Blood Bowl. I mean that. I think we should all be playing Blood Bowl, and we should try and get other people to, and make sure when they do come and play it, they feel welcome, they feel part of us, not excluded by our language, which is often elitist. We often use terms like potato and cage without explaining to people that don't know what they mean, as if it's just should be obvious. And it is once you've heard it 5 times, but not the first time you hear it. Should be welcoming in terms of it should be somewhere they feel comfortable and safe and involved. And the teams and the players and the graphics and the way we paint them shouldn't be exclusive. It shouldn't be a barrier to people feeling comfortable in those spaces. My Amazon team, not just because I've got a wife and daughter, but because I care about stuff. My Amazon team is not women in underwear. They are fully clothed and they look like they could kick your ass. We can be little changes. However, just like recycling, we need to accept that there's also a systemic issue here, that Blood Bowl came out of a sexist, racist game in the late 70s, early 80s, and that culture at the time. And there's still aspects of that hanging around in our game. And perhaps it's all right to look into some of those corners and say, is this really where the game needs to be as it goes forwards? Because if we don't, the game won't go forwards. The game will eventually die, in my opinion. Okay, that's my Jerry Springer end of rant. I haven't done one of those before, but I did this time. I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you very much to Neutral AI, to Jolene, to Krista, to Louis, that's Corn Knight. Thank you for coming on One World, One Blood Bowl. Lovely to have you here. And we'll put some links in all of the stuff about all of the things we've talked about. And you can get involved if you wish to. Thank you very much to everybody. Bye.
You've actually ended the stream this time, not just
haven't yet. No, we're still
Oh
there.
no, no.